blood sugar levels are a tremendously important factor. Think of blood sugar as the airplane fuel, the fuel that's going through your system, that's going to your engines. If you have a fuel pump for your airplane or for your car, especially for your airplane, wouldn't you want your fuel pump to be giving you steady, continuous, smooth levels of fuel to your airplane, to the engines, as they demand? And not something that's going up and down, up and down, up and down. Right? You wouldn't want your airplane to suddenly have a blood sugar crash. Right? So, what is that? How does that work? Well, I learned about this at a hypnotherapy school called HMI in Southern California. They did a study there at the time, this was 10 years ago, but at the time they'd been doing the study for 30 years, 35 years, with all of their clients, all of their patients, and a group of nurses that had volunteered for the test. So they had worked with over 100,000 people in 30 years. So this is based on working with 100,000 individual human beings. So it's a decent sample size.
Yeah.
It's acceptable, right? You can test it as it's good science. So here's what they discovered. The moment that your blood sugar levels start to go up and down too fast, you go into an unconscious, an unknown hypnagogic state. You go into a hypnotic trance, which means you're not conscious or present anymore because you're in a hypnotic trance. It's induced by shifts in blood sugar. So they determined this, and they started studying, and they taught when we first work with someone, a client comes in and they have issues, syndromes, emotions, anxiety, stress. They've been to doctors, they've tried antidepressants, nothing works, and they finally go to hypnotherapists to see what figures out. And at this school, what they figured out was that the first thing you do is you have the person keep a log of what they eat, how much they eat, and how often. And just keep a log for a few days, maybe a week. Right? So we meet, and it's nice to meet you. We're going to do hypnotherapy. You have all these issues, these whatever. Let's just start with the basics. Okay? I want you to write down everything you eat on a regular basis. Just come back in a week. And then the person comes back and you see what they eat. And rarely does somebody know how to eat in a way to keep steady blood sugar levels. So what they found is that in 100% of the people that they worked with over a 30-year period, that 80% of all of their issues, all of their fears, all of their anxieties, all of their problems disappeared when they were taught how to manage the blood sugar levels. That's simple. That's simple. So what do? They tell the person, okay, well, go and ask your doctor, go to a clinic and do a blood sugar test, right? Where you do a test fasting in the morning to see if there's anything wrong with you, if you have any serious blood sugar issues, before telling them what to eat and how to eat, right? So if you've never done it, I recommend going to a clinic, and there's a couple of things you want to do. One is you want to do blood sugar tests and stress tests on your system. You want to know where your blood sugar, you want to know what's happening with your blood, and you want to know what's happening with your urine. You want to test for all the basic health tests, including tests for heavy metals and toxins. And you want to get a baseline, clear test result so that you can see where you are. And you can do that whenever, but just at some point, just check yourself and make sure you don't have any underlying conditions. Right? And that's just a basic thing to do every once in a while. Especially because a lot of the foods that we eat are being grown with chemicals or pollutants. There's lots of heavy metals, and you could have poisoned yourself without knowing it.
But because I've done a blood test before I got here, just to have a checkup before I left for so long, but everything was fine.
Everything was fine. Great. And you checked for heavy metals? That's something to check for one day. Just go have a test and see where you're at. Mercury, nickel, and cadmium, and arsenic, and you'd be surprised at the results. You might find that you have great, you're doing fine, or you need to modify your diet accordingly. Right? So, that said, this body works best when it eats the highest quality, natural, organic foods. It just feels better. Now, there are scientists that will say that biochemically there's no difference between, I don't know, a lettuce or a potato that was grown biochemically or grown a Monsanto's GMO version. I just know it feels good in my body. When I get tested, everything works. The doctors are surprised at how healthy I am. I have test results I can show you. How low my toxins and heavy metal tests are, how balanced my body is, how healthy my heart is. They're surprised that I'm in my 50s. And I've done that not by following any rules, but just by tasting. Because tasting is an intelligence. Okay. Bacteria, amoebas, animals, plants sense nutrients and grow towards them, move towards them, walk towards them, and choose what they put into their body. And this is a very, very ancient intelligence. And I eat whatever is most delicious until it's less than most delicious. And I only eat whatever is most delicious. And if it's less than delicious, I just pass on it. And I maintain myself very healthy just by trusting. And delicious is yummy before, during, and after. So when I look at it, that looks yummy. And I smell it, that smells yummy. And I taste it, that tastes yummy. And then I've eaten it, and I eat not too much, just the right amount. And I've learned how to do that. And then I feel yummy the entire rest of the day until it's time for my next yummy meal. And then I eat whatever is yummiest in the right amount. And it feels yummy going in, and it feels yummy going out. My entire experience around food is yummy. You don't want to have a yummy experience? Just, right, yeah, exactly. So that's a big part of it. Having a yummy experience all out, right? So that's the holistic view on food, but now blood sugar levels. So for blood sugar levels, I'm gonna need to draw something for you. Just to show you what a blood sugar graph looks like.
Blood sugar. Our blood sugar can be measured out and graphed out in a way to illustrate what the best way to achieve peak performance and what it looks like when we do things like high sugar intake spikes and crashes. So I'll start by explaining the graph. So the first thing I want you to look at is that we're going to measure blood sugar levels, low blood sugar levels to high blood sugar levels. And we're going to color code it such that if your blood sugar level is too low, you're going to be in danger. And if your blood sugar level is too high, you're going to also be in danger. So these are the danger levels in red. Then we're going to have caution zones in orange. Green is going to be our good, as can seen here on the graph. And our peak performance, we're going to have it as this little narrow band in blue right here. Then this graph also contains time, because when you consume sugar, consume food, the sugar levels will go up as you intake the food and digest it, and then as you metabolize it and use it up, the blood sugar levels go down over time, right? So in this case, we start off at time 0, which is when you wake up. And the reason our first meal is called the breakfast is because we're breaking the fast. We typically have dinner at some point in the evening, and then we, depending on how late we have our dinner and how early we wake up, we have 6, 8, 10, 12 hours of what is a fast for the body. In other words, it's not getting any sugar. So we start off at 0, and we're here at baseline. Now, the ideal way to establish and create a peak performance blood sugar level is that you will eat a protein-rich meal. Now, a small protein-rich meal intake for breakfast will give you a smooth curve going up into peak performance. It'll last about an hour and a half, and then it'll slowly start to taper off like this. A medium size, starting at 0, and baseline blood sugar levels, baseline fasting blood sugar levels, will go up to peak performance, and because you've eaten a medium-sized meal, it'll extend longer. And a large protein-rich meal will give you a nice long curve that'll last a couple of hours. You can guarantee 2 hours of peak performance blood sugar levels with a large protein-rich meal intake. Right? So this is what we're looking for, and of course it depends on the situation. If you just need a half an hour or 2 hours of blood sugar, you eat accordingly. Now, what I want to illustrate in this graph as well is what a high sugar intake spike crash looks like. So you wake up, you eat something sweet, you drink a soda, a cola, a coffee, your blood sugar, because it's just pure sugar, spikes right up, gets to a point where you might even get a little dizzy, you might even get a little headache, and you could eventually pass out. If you had a high enough blood sugar intake, you could actually pass out. And then insulin will kick in, and that blood sugar will be drawn out of your blood so rapidly that you will have a crash. And then slowly back up again to baseline. And this is something that we want to avoid. So what we're looking for is figuring out what our thinking, feeling bodies need in order to function at peak performance. So we wake up and we eat a protein-rich protein-rich meal, and whether it's a snack or a medium-sized or a larger size will then give us a pretty much guaranteed peak performance window where our brain, our entire body, as far as fuel is concerned, is functioning at peak performance. Okay, so now this graph shows us what we need to do in order to attain to sustainable peak performance blood sugar levels, right? So as we saw in the graph before, if we take a small to medium-sized intake of protein-rich foods, our blood sugar levels go up smoothly, they last for a certain amount of time, and then they start to come down. Now, if we can anticipate, if we can learn how to train ourselves to pay attention to when our blood sugar level is going to start to go down, what we can do is, while the blood sugar is still at peak and it's 15-20 minutes away from going down, so about 15 minutes before you're going to drop before peak performance, what you do is you then take another handful, a small amount, of protein-rich snacks or meals. So then the blood sugar level will come up and prevent it from coming down. We repeat this every 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours as our activity levels require. And this way we can attain to a nice smooth blood sugar that can last all day. You can stay at peak performance for the entire duration of your day. Sometimes I do it for 16 hours a day. I start with a medium-sized breakfast. That might include a soft-boiled egg, yogurt, granola, juices. I can enjoy a coffee or a tea at this point. There's no problem in intaking a little bit of caffeine if that's something that you enjoy or it helps you with your mental performance. And that brings my blood sugar levels up. So let's say I had breakfast at 8 in the morning. Well, a couple hours later, an hour and a half later, I know that if I want to keep going, I'm going to take a small amount. So then I can eat a handful of nuts, almonds, a piece of cheese, an apple, a little bit of meat, protein, a chicken satay if you're in a place like I am in Thailand, a little bit of ham, anything that you like that's rich in proteins, vegetarian, non-vegetarian, meat, up to you. It doesn't really make a difference. All that matters is that we're providing the body what it needs in order to be able to maintain steady blood sugar levels. And here is what it could look like over an entire full day of peak performance, where you have a good-sized breakfast, and then you have a snack, protein-rich snack, and then you have a lunch, followed by 1 or 2 snacks, followed by a dinner, And if you need to keep working, a bit of a snack, and then drop back off at night so that you wake up the next day at baseline blood sugar levels. It's really that simple. All that you need to do is just tune into yourself. And how do you do it? Well, you just experiment with different foods and you figure out which foods help you do what as far as your blood sugar performances and also how you feel. Because if I'm going to be sitting at a desk all day and I want peak performance blood sugars, it's different than if I'm running a marathon and I want peak performance blood sugar levels, right? And this is something I can only figure out by studying myself. So this is an experiment for you to do on yourself as a subjective scientist as to what you, the unique individual thinking, feeling body, needs under different environments and different situations in order to achieve peak performance blood sugar levels. And the thing about peak performance blood sugar levels is that they guarantee that my entire thinking process and my body is going to be, that part's going to be working. Just like I want to guarantee that the fuel quality and the fuel pump in a vessel, like for example, the airplane that I'm in, that needs to have the peak performance fuel consumption. Otherwise, I'm in danger. So this is the approach that I take, and you can do this by studying yourself and figuring out how to do it. All right, so now I'd like to give you an example of a typical blood sugar curve for most people, where we start off at baseline as everyone else. We have a breakfast which may have some protein in it, but it's mostly sugary, and our blood sugar drops. And within a couple hours, we're feeling tired. So we go and we get ourselves a coffee with cream and sugar, or a soda, a carbonated soda with sugar and caffeine in it, or we eat a bunch of sugary snacks, and we have a blood sugar spike, which then kinds of knocks us out. And then we sort of recover from that, and then we go for a lunch, but the lunch, once again, we're not paying attention to our protein intake. We're not paying attention to what's happening to our blood sugar with the quality of the foods that we're eating, so then it spikes, and this is how we can continue our day. And well, your performance is going to be hindered. You're going to have moments of anxiety, stress, overwhelm, memory loss, confusion, forgetfulness of what you're doing, where you're at, need to get up and go to the water cooler, or somebody will go out and smoke a cigarette or do something because we're not fueling ourselves properly. So how is our performance going to match what we need in order to thrive? So once again, it's important for you to pay attention and experiment. Try eating the way that I'm inviting you to eat to see how it does, and then eat the way that you normally eat and feel the difference, because ultimately it's about what you feel. Because you're the one you're the vehicle. The body is the vehicle. It's the vessel that needs to perform in the world, and the outcome of the quality of your performance is going to have something to do with the quality of how you treat and, in this case, fuel your vehicle for performance. Okay, now this is a blood sugar graph of a full day of blood sugar spikes, and it's self-explanatory. And we, as kids, we'd do this. We just eat a bunch of sugar, and then we run around like crazy, and then we'd pass out. Then we get up, we eat a bunch of sugar, run around like crazy, and pass out. And if you do this once or twice every once in a while, it's not that big of a deal. But if you have a lifetime habit of this, this is a direct invitation. It's the perfect recipe for problems like diabetes and high blood pressure and kidney problems, and having a really low quality life, because how are you going to perform? How are you going to make it? So this is something for you to experiment with, and more than anything, just really pay attention to what you're doing to your body, what you're putting into it, because it does have a direct effect. And people who study this discover that 80-90% of all of their fears, problems, insecurities, anxieties, stress, overwhelm can be cleared by simply establishing nice, smooth peak performance blood sugar levels so that you can have a nice peak performance day. All right, in this final graph about blood sugar levels, I'd like to address the following condition. One is what happens when you have a high-fat, high-protein, low-sugar diet, like a keto diet. What you do when you're fasting, what happens when you're fasting, and some people do prolonged fasts. And obviously while you're sleeping. So when we're sleeping and when we're doing low sugar and fasts, we're staying here at baseline. Now, what's interesting about staying at baseline is that the most important thing is that you're maintaining a nice, smooth baseline level. This allows you to perform. There's things that you can figure out at baseline level that you cannot figure out at peak performance. And there's things that you can figure out and do at peak performance very well that you can't do very well at baseline. So there is an advantage to doing keto diets and to doing fasts because they are perfect examples of how to maintain steady blood sugar levels and the advantages of it. So in certain deep meditation practices, you will do a fast for 24, 30, 48, 50 hours, up to 72 hours. And during that time period, your mind will be very, very clear and sharp because the low, steady blood sugar levels prevents all sorts of random thoughts that would be spiking up in your thoughts. So it's of value to do occasional fasts, once a week, once a month, where you just wake up, you have a glass of water, and you eat nothing that whole day except stay hydrated, and then you go to bed. And during that time period, you'll notice that you can read, you can write, you can figure things out. Obviously, this is not the day to go out and dig a hole in your backyard and carry bags of cement and try to run a marathon, but it's a day to go in and explore fears, anxieties, negative emotions, so-called negative emotions, because they won't have a lot of fuel to act up. So maintaining steady blood sugar levels, either at baseline, at good, or at peak performance, there's something to be said about learning how to do that. And once again, you're a unique individual thinking, feeling body with a metabolism that today is what it is and tomorrow will change. And depending on the conditions, if it's hot or cold, like you're in a snowy place, you're going to eat differently than if you're in the tropics, right? So what the point of these graphs, what I'm inviting you to do is to explore, as a scientist, on yourself, eating healthy foods, the advantages of steady blood sugar levels at baseline, of peak performance steady blood sugar levels that I've shown in the previous graphs, and of course what happens when you have a spike.
It's just interesting for me to know, right? Now, what I know is that if I don't eat anything, that my blood sugar level will stay at that level for hours, all day, for 2 days, for 3 days. It'll just stay at that level. And that's a nice, flat, basic blood sugar level. And it's important to know that because that can be there's an exercise that I'll describe to you, an experiment that you do on yourself, a yoga that you do to determine what your baseline blood sugar level is and how you function at that baseline blood sugar level. This is extremely valuable to know this. Okay? I'm going to talk more about it later, but you want to know what that is, and what I mean what that is, not how many deciliters of glucose per whatever liters, how you actually feel. How does your body function at this level? Right? Does that make sense? So that's number one. This is baseline. I'm going to call it BL. Okay. Then the next thing you need to know is that if you eat a balanced diet, for example, if I have a breakfast, for me, an ideal breakfast for me is and either a little hashed brown potato or an English muffin or toast or a little bit of rice or a little bit of carbs and some protein with some vegetables. My body just loves them. Okay? If I eat that, or if you eat a balanced diet that has proteins, fats, and carbs, and your stomach is empty, so you eat not to fill your stomach. It's not a gas tank you want to fill to 100%. You want to eat to 75%. Unless you're going to go into an extreme situation, in which case I might fill my tank all the way up to the top. Right? But the reality is that I live in a world where I'm never more than 10 or 15 minutes away from food. So I don't overfill myself, and I don't eat more than I need to. And I know that biologically, my stomach is about the size of both of my fists. So if I eat a handful of food, that's about half a stomach. And if I eat 2 handfuls of food, that's a full stomach. So I ate about a handful and a half. I ate about a handful of food, a little bit more. Yeah? Does that make sense? Right, because a handful of watermelon is basically a handful of water with a little sugar and a little water and a little vitamin. So that's not food. I mean, that's not a complete diet. I need a balance of proteins, fats, and carbs. Okay. So an egg is not the same as a watermelon or an apple. An egg is a very high nutritious source. 2 eggs is too much for me. When I was a child, who eats like 3 eggs, 4 eggs sometimes, and just give me another egg. Just grow it. I'm not growing it. When I was a teenager, I would sometimes eat 6 eggs. As I got older, it dropped to 2 eggs. Now 1 egg is a lot of food. Does that make sense?
That's different per day, or
What's that?
that's different per day? Because sometimes I wake up and I'm really hungry. Sometimes I just wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna eat.
Right, but regardless of whether I'm hungry or not, I know for a fact that when I wake up, my blood sugar level is at baseline. And I don't have any problems. I'm not sick at that level. I'm okay with doing that. And the reason I want to determine that is because I'm going to give you some potential experiments for you to do on yourself, but you don't want to hurt yourself. So you want to be aware of where you are, right? So the first thing is that you will have a baseline blood sugar level when you wake up. If you want to know what that is, just go get it tested. If you want to make sure that you don't have any difficulties or challenges, because some people, they have extra high glucose levels, diabetes issues, or others. You want to just make sure that you're clear on that. So, and I've studied this and I've done this, and I can feel it. And I have I eat a certain breakfast, and then I just sit, and I read a book, or I just sit and meditate, or I do some yoga, I just wait, and I feel how is my body changing as I'm eating, and when does it start to go down? And I mapped this out before I studied it. I did this experiment. I just was curious. What happens when I eat? How do I feel? And it matches the same time that my body matches. In other words, in science, if you actually measure my blood sugar levels, they correlate with what I'm feeling. Right? Does that make sense?
But you can also measure your blood sugar levels yourself.
I'm sure there's things you can buy to test it, but I went and I've done a series of tests. But I already determined my just by feeling,
So it was
just by trying.
confirmation of the test you did.
So it's confirmation that there's a science behind it, right? You have to be your own subjective scientist. You have to figure out for yourself what works for you. But it turns out that this matches what any healthy human being does. What if it takes me about 15 minutes for blood sugar to go in, and by 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, I'm at peak? What happens if, and I start going down after about 2 with minimal activity, after 2 to 2.5 hours, my blood sugar level starts going down? What if before I'm hungry? This is why the fact that you feel hungry or not may not be so essential as to when you eat or not. Before I'm hungry, I choose, so at 2 hours, 2.5 hours, I choose to eat again. I'm tuned, I'm breathing properly, I'm hydrated properly, I stretch properly, I slept properly, I ate properly, I gave my body exactly what it needs. And guess what? It only really wants delicious. So I'm not even sacrificing delicious. It's whatever is the yummiest. It feels the yummiest. The entire process has to be yummy. It has to be overall yummy. Not just in my mouth for 5 seconds. Right? The entire experience wants to be yummy. So now, sure enough, I've got this. Let's make it this color. Got this nice, smooth, and I can feel that. I am physically, consciously aware of my nutritional needs within 15 minutes. In other words, I have a landing place and enough fuel to land my airplane within 15 minutes at any given time.
Then you have to make sure that you're always in a place where you have the yummy what's available.
That's right. So, for example, let's say that I am here at home and I'm alone, just me and my family, we're hanging out, nothing special is happening. I eat, I don't eat, doesn't really matter. I eat a little yogurt for breakfast, coconut, it's enough, it doesn't really matter because I can play anywhere along here. My blood sugar levels will go, depending on how much I eat, will go anywhere. I don't want them to go too high, I don't want them to go too low. But if I need to work, if I have a peak performance experience, if I'm going to go to JT Fox family reunion, for example, or I'm going to be at an Anthony Robbins seminar,
That was a really challenge to have the healthy food.
it's a challenge to have healthy food. So then what do? Well, I'm never more than a few minutes away from a convenience store where I can buy almonds, cashews, and peanuts. A piece of cheese, a yogurt, an apple, a banana. Right? A power bar. I almost always have a backpack or a fanny pack or a box in the car or where I can keep a power bar, a pack of nuts, a handful of food. Because if you eat a handful of protein-rich foods every hour and a half to 2.5 hours or 3 hours, depending on your actual needs, you can maintain steady blood sugar levels throughout the entire day. Which means I am now, my nervous system, my body is functioning. It has the water, the oil, the generator, the diesel, the fuel, the rocket engine, it has everything it needs to function properly. Now I can do anything within the physical limitations of what this body can do. Right? Which means I can be present for my business deal, I can set up my work, or I can go into my deepest, darkest fears, my stress, my anxiety. I can go into the places of my emotions or my feelings that people usually don't want to go to. Right? Because if you want to go on an exploratory journey of yourself, you have to find not just your strengths, you have to find all your weaknesses and you have to know them equally. You have to know what your fears are, you have to know what your anxieties are, you have to know what your stresses are, because each and every one is pressing a button on your walkie-talkie. The only way that I can actually go in and explore the more intense areas of my inner world or my outer world is when I'm functioning at peak performance. So I go out of my way to know what are my peak performance requirements, because if I'm just going to go for a Sunday cruise, who cares? If I'm going to climb a mountain or run a race, I need to be in shape for that, right? So let's say that I am I'm at work. I've had a good breakfast, right? And it's mid-morning, and let's just put an imaginary scenario. My phone rings, my secretary says, big client is waiting for you. They're going to be here in 15 minutes. Perfect. I shut down everything that I'm doing. I check my blood sugar levels. I know I'm going to have to talk to this person for a couple of hours, or I'm going to, right? Eat a handful of nuts, a power bar, a piece of cheese, an apple, a handful of almonds, a Baby Bell cheese, or a little piece of cheddar cheese, and an apple, and I know that this body is good for the next 2 to 3 hours. And water. And breath. I'm ready. I just did my pit stop. How long did it take me? 5 minutes to just, you want to chew it well, and eat it well, and relax, clear your mind while you're eating it, right? Love almonds. Love the cheese. Crispy almond. Yeah. Cleared. I just put down everything my entire life. Now I can be fully present for whatever comes next. Does that make sense? When you figure out what this is for you, your breathing, your hydration, and your nutritional requirements, you will start perform. You will notice a difference. And if you can just make this your most important yoga, your most important discipline, your ritual is pay attention to what I eat. I'm going to make sure I'm eating in a way that. Now, what happens if you don't eat protein-rich foods? What happens if you don't eat properly, or you just have a double mocha frappa, whatever, and a chocolate donut? your blood sugar levels are now going to, in 15 minutes, do this. As soon as they start going down, you're going to go into a hypnagogic trance. And you're going to go on autopilot. You're going to start yawning. You're going to start missing. It's like you just sprayed something in your eyes, and now you can't see your sensors. You can't see your altimeter. You can't see where the landing is. Now you're on autopilot. You just put out your lights. So, it's an important experiment to do, is to wake up one day
What are you looking forward to?
and do that to yourself. So that you know consciously, so that you know what you're doing. This is why first you want to make sure that you don't have, any heart conditions or diabetic conditions that could put you in a hospital. Right? Does that make sense? Because
I already did check.
I've done this intentionally many times just to see what happens.
Just wake up and you do it.
Wake up and eat a donut and drink lots of coffee and sugar and just see what happens. And just sit and just watch it and feel it. And you feel your body just,
Yeah. I do something before.
and then you crash.
If I have too much coffee, then I start sort of sweating. And
Right. Because here's the thing, one day that might be all you have access to. And I still want to peak perform. So if I'm going to do this, I want to do this beautifully. If this is going to happen, I want this to happen beautifully.
then you start controlling.
Because I'm aware of my range of being, my range of motion. Just like when I do yoga. If I go to do yoga and I stretch, what I'm really doing is I'm anchoring in my range of motion with conscious awareness for that given day. What's my range of motion? Standing, sitting, laying down. Okay. Does that make sense? And then that prevents me from unconsciously doing anything that will give me an injury. Just knowing how far can I go? Okay, and I don't overextend myself because I know how far I can go today. Because tomorrow's different. So you can do every day, every meal is an opportunity for you to feel how you feel with every meal, with every meal. Right? Does that make sense? Now, we're at a point where you should probably take a break and refuel. Practice what we just talked about. Practice what we were just talking about. So, go have a meal. Eat whatever is yummiest. Make sure it's rich in protein, fats, and carbohydrates. So that you can, but not overfill yourself. So that you can come back in an hour and we can continue. Does that make sense? Food. Okay? The first level of food is blood sugar levels. In order to maintain blood sugar levels, the only thing you need to do is eat a diet that's balanced in proteins, carbs, and fats. And then, so start with breakfast, for example, where you 3/4 fill your stomach with proteins, fats, and carbs. For me, it works about 30%, 30%, 30%. That's a very, very basic breakfast for me. So it can be an egg, some potato, or some rice, or some bread, right? The egg has lots of fat, it has lots of protein, and the source of carb is some grain or something. It can be a handful of nuts, a piece of cheese, some yogurt, an apple, a banana, right? It doesn't matter what it is. I'm only talking about blood sugar levels at this point. So the most basic, most simple is that your body is made up of proteins, carbs, and fats. And a certain amount of housekeeping, a certain amount of regeneration happens where you need whatever amount you need for your body in the moment. A child obviously needs to input more proteins, carbs, fats, and calories than it's going to burn because it needs to transform them, right? We have two types of metabolism. One is catabolic metabolism, where we break foods down into energy, and then and basic metabolism that allows us to build and put things together. Right? So in order to have a stable blood sugar, like just nutritional, just basic, the most elementary level of nutrition, you do that by giving yourself a certain amount of proteins, fats, and sugars. When you eat them, you want to chew your food properly because the carbohydrate digestion will start in your mouth. So everything that's soft, like breads and potatoes and grains and rices and nuts, you want to really chew those up really, really well. You want to chew everything up really, really well. And that will start to digest in your mouth. It'll break down into simple sugars, which will then start absorbing into your body. You swallow nicely ground up and chewed up fats, proteins, and carbs. In your stomach, the stomach acids will then start to break down the proteins into individual peptides, which can then be absorbed. And then later in the rest of your digestive system, as it goes through, your liver will secrete some bile, which will help emulsify fats, and those will get absorbed into your body. Right? The sugars absorb very quickly. If you do a blood sugar test on yourself, where you start off like baseline and you just eat sugar, you'll see how fast you can feel it. It takes minutes. It just immediately starts going through. So the first thing that's going to fill your blood sugar levels is the simple sugars, and followed by the complex sugars. So that's the spike up. Right? Now you're going up. Now, those are going to end. In the time that it takes for your blood to absorb the sugar that's in the food, the proteins will start to break down, and the fats will start to break down. In your body, if you don't need any carbs, if you don't need any sugars at all whatsoever, and you eat protein, half of the amino acids are capable of being turned into sugar. They're glycogenic. And the other half are capable of being turned into fat. So proteins are the most versatile food source. So I'm going to stress a handful of protein-rich foods to maintain that peak performance blood sugar level. So you're going to eat whatever you need in order to get to whatever blood sugar level you need for breakfast. Right? Does that make sense?
And do you always then prefer animal proteins or maybe plant proteins?
At the protein level, it makes no difference for this conversation. It doesn't matter if I'm getting animal proteins or plant proteins. All that matters is that I'm giving this body a continuous supply of slow burning foods. So I'm giving it sugar, which is fast burning, fast consumption, fast absorbent, goes right into your blood and it gets consumed immediately. And that's going to go up. And if I don't add any proteins to it, it's going to get consumed rapidly and it's going to go down. By giving proteins, nuts or a chicken satay here in Thailand or whatever, right? I eat that up, and my body will, as the blood sugar is starting to drop, my body will convert the amino acids into sugar. It'll convert half the amino acids into sugar. So, but it does it slowly. So that extends my peak. Does that make sense? I'm extending my blood sugar peak. I'm reaching my peak with sugar. I can drink a glass of orange juice, and by the time I go for my Eggs Benedict, my blood sugar levels are already up. But the fats and the proteins will then help extend that curve. Does that make sense? And then it's going to start to go down. And I can feel when it's going down. I know when I'm at peak, and I know when I'm at 75. 80%, 90%, 85%, by experimenting and putting my full awareness and just doing it and seeing what happens. By eating, by picking a day where my what I'm going to study, what I'm going to do, sitting in my beautiful little bungalow, is I'm going to start with baseline blood sugar levels, and then I'm going to eat an apple. Just sit and watch the entire process. I'm going to eat a handful of nuts. Slower. I'm going to eat some cheese. different. And then I'm going to take an apple and some almonds and a piece of cheese and eat them together, and I'm going to watch how my blood sugar level goes up, maintains, extends, and slowly goes down. Smooth. Maybe a little yogurt. Smooth experience. Smooth takeoff, smooth landing.
Definitely do that here.
Right? So you can do that. And you can do that anywhere and everywhere. That's the beauty of it. Right? Does that make sense? Now, apart from that, which is just the most basic building blocks, I need oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. I need water to go in and water to go out. Water to go out to flush out excess nutrients and toxins and help the whole system stay lubricated and happy. Right? I need blood sugar levels to be smooth up and smooth down. Spikes are jerky. Right? Everybody likes it when you're sitting in the back of the taxi and the guy accelerating too much, hitting the brakes. Smooth it out, man. Right? You want to be smooth on yourself. That doesn't mean that you can't jump into action, right? But for 99.9% of your life experience, just because you have a Ferrari or a Porsche doesn't mean you got to spin your tires at every red light, right? There's something to be said about smoothly accelerating and smoothly braking, and then when you need to hit the gas, you can. Right? Does that make sense? So, maintaining steady blood sugar levels in states of inactivity are going to be different than if I'm going to go on a hike. If I'm going on a hike, I might be munching a power bar every 30 minutes, or half a power bar, or a handful of nuts, or every hour. I might just be supplementing because I'm burning more. Right? Does that make sense? If I'm playing chess, going against a supercomputer, I might have an IV drip. Right? Because it's an extreme situation.
And it's also what I had during university, that when I was studying, I ate so much. I was like, we were all like, we're just sitting there and just reading.
Right. So that leads us to the next level. The next step is, what does your body nutritionally require in order to be able to take care of itself, to grow, to regenerate, to have the healthiest skin, to have nice hair, to have a glow, right? Like what does the flower need so that it smells better, right? It has a more, because part of it is the genetics, right? This particular variety, right? And part of it is the nutrients that it's getting, right? So how are you taking care of this body? So what are the foods that your body needs so that it feels good? Now, biochemically, our bodies require a little bit of everything, with variations depending on where you live, what level of activity you have, what kind of stress you have, right? These are going to be different. My feeling is, my understanding, what I experience is that as long as I'm getting a little bit of everything over a week-long period, my body's getting what it needs. In other words, I don't need to eat vegetables every day, or a smoothie every day, or meat every day, I don't need anything every day. Well, I need water every day. I need protein and carbs every day and fats, but it doesn't really matter what they are as long as it's balanced over a certain period of time. Now, if I'm living in the tropics, I mostly am not working and not doing anything, just sitting in my hammock, enjoying my life here and just reading a book. Very little food. Yogurt, fruit, muesli, an egg every other day, vegetables, right? That's it. A little meat now and then, a little fish now and then. Very, very minimalistic. If I'm in a place where there's ice and snow and I'm working outside and I'm eating 2 or 3 eggs, potatoes, lots of extra fat, bacon, right? Why? Because that's just what this body needs. I had some friends living in San Diego who decided to go raw. They became raw foodists. Right? Raw, but vegan raw, not raw like paleo raw. Right? And living in San Diego, they lived that way for a very long time. And then one day they had an opportunity to go live in the East Coast, in Long Island, in the wintertime. Somebody had a summer house and said, hey, you guys can stay at my summer. They wanted to write a book or do whatever. They were on some sort of sabbatical. And they went there, and I went to visit them, and they were trying to live there in the cold, eating raw. First, the stores didn't supply all the fresh fruits and vegetables. In New England, in the north, in the cold, in the wintertime, you do not gain the same vegetables that you do in San Diego year-round. Right? And second, I don't think you can put enough calories into your body. Just eating raw nut balls and watermelon shakes and stuff like that. Right? Like, it's just how I went to visit him. I was like, I don't know how you guys are going to do this. I need food. I need a stew. I want stew.
I even have this weather here already. I want
It's already cold. I had some lentils.
Meal, yeah.
Yes, I had lentils. Oh, so good. Nice homemade lentil soup, right?
Yeah.
And look how cold it is. Right? So you got to figure out what you need. Let's say that you live in Nepal. You're a porter. You carry heavy things up the mountain in high altitude. Or you're a chasqui runner in the Andes. Right? What do you need? Well, the Nepalese people, the Tibetan and Nepalese people, my understanding is that they're some of the physically the strongest people on the planet. I've seen people carrying mountains of stuff. I haven't tried. I don't know exactly. But I've heard that the women can carry 2 to 3 times their weight. And the men can carry 3 to 5 times their weight. I don't know if it's real, but they can carry a lot more weight than I can. Their diet is 90% carbs. And I've done some climbing in the Andes at altitude, and if I eat fats and proteins, my digestive system locks up. I can't digest. I get sick. Carbs burn clean. You're just using your muscles, just carrying and lifting and breathing. There's a that much oxygen, so you have to breathe more. Right? So I'll eat a carbon-rich, low-fat diet up in the mountains at altitude. It's different. It's good for you to know what you need wherever you wish to thrive. It's nice to go and explore different areas and try, right? But these are just examples of what you can figure out for yourself. The bottom line is that you want to give your body what it needs to be healthy, strong, relaxed, present, intuitive, sensitive. Right? And there is a biology to that. And only you can figure out exactly what you need for any given situation. Right? The sooner you do, the easier you get that out of the way, and you can get to more advanced levels of being present, more complex levels. These are the most simple ones. Yeah? Now, so as far as blood sugar levels are concerned, there's an experiment that I did on myself that I'm going to share with you, which I highly recommend. And it's called, and I don't have any name for it, it's just a certain way of doing a fast. And the fast is very...
fast.
Didn't invent anything, it's very simple, right? So what you do is you pick a day when you're going to do your fast. Let's say you're going to do it tomorrow or next week or whenever. Okay? And eat whatever you want before you go to bed, enjoy, get ready. Now that day, of course, is going to be, you're going to start with no activity, so it's a non-work day. No phones, just kind of mini retreat day, right? Does that make sense? A weekend if you're no exercise. Just nothing. Start with nothing. Start with your most simple control experiment. It's going to be you're just going to sit in a hammock and enjoy life, and feel what the experience is like when you do nothing. Absolutely nothing, and you eat nothing and you do nothing. So you eat whatever you want, and at first the tendency might be to overeat the night before, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter. Just eat until you're content. And the next day, you will only drink water. And you'll go to bed just with water.
So
I wake up.
The first day, you don't drink anything.
Only water.
Okay.
You're allowed to drink all the water you need, and by this point, you should have figured out how much water you need. It might be slightly different because you're not eating. Because you want to fill it up, okay. But just drink whatever you need. Don't overdrink, but don't underdrink. Just drink water and just sit. And you want to see how you feel in your body. And very importantly, you want to see what your mind does. What thoughts come up? What feelings? What memories? What fears? What hopes? What projections? start dreaming about food, or you start thinking that you're getting hungry, or that you might starve. And my first question is, have you ever done a fast of more than 24 hours? And the next morning, waking up and maybe doing a gentle yoga, being relaxed. No, just the second. Okay, so you wake up,
Yeah,
and
the first day is the night before you have.
the night before tonight you have dinner. Tomorrow you just drink water. You go to bed tomorrow night. The next morning you wake up, but you don't rush to have food. If you're hungry, don't go get food. Wait till you're not hungry anymore. Wait a couple of hours. Have a late breakfast. And soft, gentle, a poached egg, right? Yogurt, muesli, fruit, simple, balanced. Yeah. So you want some proteins, you want some fats, you want carbs. You don't want to just drink juice or just eat fruits. And you may not necessarily want to eat a big slab of bacon. Up to you. And that's it. That's the fast. And I did this once a week for 8 months. I learned so much about myself. I started doing it on weekends. And at first I was tired and groggy, and I would want to drink a coffee, and I would get a headache. And I would just sit and breathe through it and just watch it and witness it. And going to bed at night, the feelings of, I'm going to starve, and nothing happens. And then waking up feeling really good the next day. Very importantly, notice the rate of your thoughts, the changes in your thoughts, your mental and your emotional activity. Up to you. If you have some fears around food, your thoughts about food will accelerate and go up. Once you've done it once or twice or 3 times or 10 times, you realize you're not in any danger, you're not going to starve, nothing's going to happen to you, it's not a big deal.
It's mind thing. Yeah, I've done a lot of
So what?
fasting.
So, big deal.
I did it one time a 10-day fasting. So you have to learn how to chew again.
You have to learn how to chew again, yeah. Now, I'm going to say that for this experiment and for what we're doing, the limit will be 2 nights. If you fast more than 3 days, your body starts to break itself down. And you're no longer really fasting, and now you're just digesting yourself at a steady level. And just for the fun of it, anyone who claims to be a vegan or a vegetarian who fasts for more than 2 days need to know that they are auto-cannibalizing themselves. They are no longer vegan or vegetarian. From the 3rd day on, they are eating human flesh. Your own fat, your own proteins are breaking down, your own fats are breaking down. Your liver is reducing, but like you're having a nice, raw, human flesh diet. You're not a vegetarian or a vegan anymore. Okay? And your mind will start to, it'll quiet down, start to relax, but you're going to start to accumulate different levels of nutrients in your blood system, and it's going to start to get toxic. And before it gets painful, your body will start to release natural endorphins, and you'll start to feel good, and then you'll start to hallucinate. And you can have some very spiritual experiences, talking to God, to Jesus, to Pachamama, to whatever is part of your belief system, aliens, if you believe in aliens. Whatever you believe in, your mind will start projecting because it will start to malfunction. So for the purpose of learning how to function at peak performance, I will not recommend doing more than 2 days, 2 nights. Because the purpose is how to function intuitively, spontaneously, mind off, except for when you have to think about some new challenge, right? So that's the direction we're going. Does that make sense? So, and since I brought it up, it doesn't matter what you eat when you're eating, as long as you're eating what your body needs. If your body only needs fruits and vegetables, then only eat fruits and vegetables. If your body needs raw beef and fried bacon, eat raw beef and fried bacon. You'll go through phases where you'll eat more meats, you'll eat less meats. It's good to go through a phase where you experiment with not eating any meat products, any animal products for several weeks, a few months, just to see what it does to you. But every once in a while, your body might need some animal products because you're an animal. And your metabolism, the way metabolism functions is that it starts by first reusing, burning what it needs, just to keep your body warm and give you energy for. And then the rest it reuses, and then it recycles, and then it rebuilds, and then it scavenges, right? It's missing something. So whatever your body needs, especially if you're an active body, you're going to need all the basic building blocks that a body requires. And, well, animals have a nervous system and a hormonal system, nutrients that you have. Plants do not. There's some analogs, there's some things your body will reuse as far as fats and hormones and things like that. There's some sort of cross-linking because it's all part of the same life, right? But your body does have certain requirements, and depending on your level of activity. Now, when I'm working in Bangkok and Singapore, I'm working with high-end clients, I'm doing business meetings, I need a certain amount of beef. About 100 grams twice a week. High quality beef. This body feels much better, it stays more grounded and present in a city environment, in a business environment, out in the concrete jungle. This tiger needs to eat a little bit of beef. More than that puts me to sleep, makes me sleepy, lazy, lethargic. But 100 grams of top quality grass-fed beef, medium rare, somehow this body just love it. When I'm doing deep emotional work, retreats, working with people who have gone through traumas, serious things, I need to eat a lot of pork. I need pork fat, pork belly. Thai-style pork belly, the mugrab, or bacon, somehow. That's what I need. And there's areas, emotional territories that I've explored that I know I never would have reached not eating meats. Why? Who cares? I just know that so I experimented. I tried this way of eating, that way of eating. What can I access? What can I find? If I don't eat any meats for 6 months, any animal products for 6 months, I become very quiet, very gentle, very relaxed, very baseline, almost like when I'm on a fast. But I can't go deeper than that. I have no. My dynamic range is flat. I don't have any intense outbursts, but I don't have any deep realizations, any deep discoveries. And everything's sort of pleasant. Everything's kind of muted in a soft, pleasant way. Like, right? As soon as I eat meats, my life gets a little more edgy, a little more dynamic. I become a little more raw, but I've got more dynamic range. And that dynamic range serves me for my lifestyle, for the way that I live my life. That helps me. Does that make sense? I was living in Chiang Mai for a couple of years, and I experimented, and for almost 8 months, I just needed to experience just eating vegetables, and I studied guitar, and keyboards, and voice, and drawing, and painting, and yoga, and Tai Chi. I got my pilot's license. I did all of those things. Like, there wasn't any limit to what I could do. I'm not saying I can do less. However, I decided to go live in Bangkok, and I realized, and in Bangkok, I just couldn't keep that level of, it's a different environment. In a very relaxed environment, I need very little. Simple foods, easy to digest, simple, no complexity. In an environment where there's 12 million people, there's 1 million people within a couple of miles. We're herd animals. We pick up their energies. And people have a different level of intensity in a city than they do on a beach. Right? So my body emotional nutrients get used up and burned up. Right? Imagine driving a car on a flat road in warm climate all the time, and imagine taking the same car, attaching a trailer to it, putting a ton of bricks on it, and driving it up a mountain on a hot summer day. Same nutrients, same fuel, same oil, same, right? You're going to change the water more often, you're going to change the oil more often.
With the warm weather, and then yesterday was the day before yesterday. I was so hungry all day. It's like, what is going on? I have to eat all day. So, yeah, it's because of the storm.
It's part of the storm.
Yeah.
And if you watch, experiment with what's going to be yummiest. Maybe I just want fruits and vegetables. Maybe I need stews and I need meats and I need chew on a bone, right?
Cake.
So you give yourself that. And the important thing is that you're aware of what's coming up for you. What are you feeling? What are you remembering? You never know. You go to the corner store, you grab an ice cream, you eat it, and suddenly you remember an experience as a child, and it releases some root tip of some tiny little situation that 20, 30, 40, 50 years later turns into a trauma. So I use food to give the body what it needs, and then allow the body to decide. Let it learn. Why not let your body eat whatever it wants to eat? Not whatever you think you should eat. Which means giving yourself permission to eat whatever. Including some junk food now and then. Just because your body one day walks into whatever chain place there is, McDonald's somewhere, and it orders whatever, order it, eat it, but with awareness. It won't hurt you to eat it once. One thing, though, that you do need to be aware of is that foods today have lots of toxins, including heavy metals. So when it comes to certain fish and certain grains and rice products and certain nutrients will be rich in toxic chemicals. And you can overload your body with toxic chemicals without knowing it. You may not have any sensors for that. Right? That said, when I did my blood tests, I was at between 1% and 5% of the minimal acceptable level for all toxic metals, except for arsenic. And in arsenic, I was at 60% of the minimal acceptable level. And I did a little research and I discovered, because I'd never thought about it, I discovered that rice is a main source of arsenic. So you can find rices that are grown in areas where there's less arsenic, and there's arsenic resistant, or rices that don't pick up this more arsenic. It's a poison for the body. And there's ways of cooking it. And living in Asia, it's a little difficult to be picky and choosy about where you're going to eat rice and where does it come from, or rice noodles, or any rice products. Right? Does that make sense? But as soon as we discovered, John and I both had the same. Heavy metal levels were between 1% and 5%. So we're eating well. Whatever is delicious for us is in the right amount, is working, including eating some fish, some tuna, some different types of foods that have certain levels. Your body will wash away. Right? But with rice, so what we did is we checked online. We found a place that sells different varieties of organic rice that are certified low arsenic. And we ordered cases of all the different rices. 80%, 90% of what we eat is at home, so 90% of the time I'm eating low arsenic rice, and every once in a while when I go out, I don't need a mountain of rice, but if where I'm eating they're serving me rice, I'll eat whatever amount of rice because my body can take care of it. I'm not overloading it 100% of the time. Right? Your body can deal with toxins. Moderation. A year later, I'm going to test myself again and see where I'm at. See if what I'm doing is working. That way I have a reference point. See, having a mind is useful when it's in alignment and working for keeping the body healthy. A mind that thinks it knows what the body needs and tries to give the body what it believes it needs is not as efficient as a mind that produces menu options and can read labels.
And do you also keep a diary from what you're eating and how you're feeling?
I did until I didn't need to do it anymore. I practiced tying shoelace knots until I didn't need to practice anymore. I counted my toes until it became very clear that I wake up every day with 10 toes. I don't have to count them. Right?
Because it's the same thing with sometimes with foods that, for example, with the cake, I was so craving for cake, and I ate the cake, and I was feeling perfectly well afterwards. But sometimes I have gonna eat the cake, and I'm feeling horrible afterwards. So it's the same thing with exercising.
Right. So you have to be aware of what you do and how you do it. What works for you. Only you can figure that out. I can only tell you what works for me. I remember when I was a teenager, 12, 13 years old, playing Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. We'd get together on a Saturday or a Sunday, ride our bikes over, and we would bring, and I remember Doritos and Pringles coming out 40 years ago. And they were like the new thing. And we would get family-sized bags of this stuff and just eat it and play Dungeons and Dragons and drink Coke, Pepsi, Sprite, whatever there was, 7 of them, right?
I'm starting
Already overwhelmed. So that's within an hour. 45 minutes, we've already entered overwhelm.
Breathe more.
Yep. Breathe more, take a breath. All right. So be aware of that so that you can then start timing yourself, right? And I remember that I would open this bag and I would start eating it, and the first quarter of the bag was so delicious. Yeah. And the next quarter of the bag was all right. It was still good. And the next quarter of the bag wasn't that yummy anymore, and the last bit of the bag was just disgusting. And later I was like, why did I eat all this? Right? So this happened a certain number of times. And then one day, I woke up to the possibility that why don't I stop eating when it stops being yummy? And I started applying that to everything in my life. Why don't I just do things while they're yummy, and as soon as they're less than yummy, I ease up. I pause. I slow down. I taper it down. So I started having a growing number of peaks of yummy experiences. They kept going and they kept going, and one day they just connected. It's just living a continuous yummy experience with certain moments of, oh, I just stepped on a piece of glass that's not so yummy. Or, oh, I ate a little too much of this, or drank a little too much of that. And I'm like, that's a little less than yummy. Okay, slow it down. Right? So you can calibrate. You have to titrate your experience. You have to set the baseline standards for breath, for water, for blood sugar, proteins, fats, and for foods in general. You have to see how you function at baseline. You have to see how you function at peak. You have to put yourself into a couple of crashes where you eat too much sugar, or you eat too much fat, or you eat too much sugar and fat, and see what happens. Okay? And then you just watch. And because your intention is to learn about yourself, each time you can learn how to smooth out those. Before you know it, you've got a nice, smooth experience. Once you have a smooth experience, you'll see that the number of questions, doubts, fears, stress, anxiety within yourself, about yourself, those start to slowly disappear because you become attuned to. Hopefully, eventually you have a nice positive addiction to feeling yummy on a consistent, regular basis. And you're an addict to feeling yummy on a consistent, right? That's it, because yummy is whatever is yummiest for you. And I've never found anyone that their yummiest experience is hurting other people. That's not yummy. The yummiest experience is when you're having the best experience and when as many other people as possible are also having the yummiest. That's the peak yummy experience. Right? That's the most pleasurable, is when everyone is in a state of greater pleasure. And when I'm having pleasure and others are in a state of pain, or I'm yummy and everybody else is having a yucky time, that takes away from my yumminess. So I'm inspired to help spread the yumminess, or at least inspire others to kind of come out of their yuckiness. And if they don't want to, I move away from them. Because I respect their freedom to have the yuckiest life possible, not around me. Right? So I focus on what do I need to have the yummiest life possible. And the very baseline basic, always, until my last breath, is going to be my breathing, my hydration, my blood sugar levels, and my nutritional levels. These are the most basic. Once I nail these three, the rest is super easy. Because now my nervous system is getting everything it needs to stay at peak performance. Right? Does it matter that I don't have the best paint job on my Ferrari? Well, the engine's just, the transmission's perfectly synced, and the wheels and the engine, all the mechanics. Now I can work on detailing the outside. But if all I focus on is my makeup, or right, my abs, or my pecs, or my this, or my that, right? And I'm not paying attention to everything else, I'm missing out. And I need all of that bandwidth. I need all of that neural net functioning to figure out what's happening in the outside world, because the outside world is infinitely more complex than my inside world. It's infinitely bigger, and it's changing very rapidly. The situations are changing more rapidly. I'm in a state of homeostasis. I'm in a balanced state within. I can deal with the changes on the outside much more effectively, more efficiently, more intelligently, more intuitively. You know? Because in order for my intuition to function, I need to know that my intuition is the product of my instincts and my awareness. Without my awareness, I'm just an instinctive being. The child is just instinctive. The plant is just instinctive. An animal is just instinctive. Plants, animals, all of life is aware. Unconscious of the fact that they're aware, but they are aware. All of life that on this planet for the last 700 million years is self-aware. It knows the difference between self and others. The dog knows you're not a dog. It knows if you're afraid or not. It knows that that's a cat. The cat knows if the dog's going to chase it or not, right? Like, we're aware of ourselves and we're aware of what's happening, right? If our species is divided into sexes, male and female, we are self-aware because we have to be aware of what our potential mate is going to be different from us. We don't typically try to mate with the same. We can be attracted to, but the actual mating will only occur between opposites, right? So you have to be self-aware. But only mature humans can be aware of their awareness and aware of their self-awareness. And aware of your self-awareness. The witnessing awareness that allows you to watch yourself, this body in action, is available to you only when your body is healthy, relaxed, present, right? Then you can watch yourself. And that only happens when your body reaches a certain level of maturity. We're all born unconscious, unaware in a state of synesthesia. We can't tell sounds from colors, from flavors, from anything. Everything's a blur. Slowly our senses start to resolve because our nerve endings keep growing. As our body grows, it's very, very limited, very simple. We go through all the evolutionary stages. We start off as a single cell. We turn into a little ball, to a little hollow ball. We grow like a little worm, a little hollow tube. Then we start growing appendages. We have gill slits, develop into lungs. So we're like fish. Then we evolve into amphibians and reptiles. By the time we're born, we're not quite human yet. A newborn, a one-day-old baby chimpanzee is more self-aware than a 3-year-old human child.
Wow.
Yes, sir. So when we're born, we're not even self-aware when we're born. We have no sense of self and non-self. We imprint everything from our environment. From our parents, the way they're feeling, the way they approach life. And we do that believing that it's us. We have no sense of self, of separate. Somewhere around the age of 2 or 3, we start to do things like say, mine. We got to fight for it because this is mine. Now we have a sense of self-awareness. Somewhere between 3, 4, and 5, we discover that we're male or female, we're boys or girls. I'm a boy, she's a girl. Oh, that's interesting. Right? When we reach puberty, so somewhere around age 12, 13, 14, the intelligence at the other end of our spinal column, we're an entire spinal column, with several ganglia and nerve endings and many levels of complexity, activates. And we're capable of being aware of our awareness for the first time. It doesn't happen before puberty. In that time period, if we're given the space to know ourselves, to grow ourselves, to trust ourselves, to experience a whole range of being, by the time we reach puberty, we don't really have any questions about ourselves. We're just curious about others. What's happening over there? What are you doing? What are you doing? Right? But we're not put in an environment that's conducive for us to learning how to breathe properly, eat properly, drink properly, stretch properly. Does that make sense?